Welcome to another Airbrush Asylum video. In this how-to video, I'm going to show you how to paint some pink and violet candy real fire. So the first thing we're doing is we're using an aluminium composite panel. You would have seen I've used these before in videos. You can get these from local sign supply shops. So this one's already black, so we're using the glossy side, and I've just used the KC10 wax and grease remover from House of Colour. I've wiped it on and then wiped it off before I start sanding. This is to prevent you sanding any contaminants into the base, and I've just used a grey Scotch-Brite to rough up the surface and take away the shine. Once that's done, you can see I've just re-wetted my paper towel there, and I've given it another degrees down. Now I've switched to KC20 House of Colour post sanding cleaner, which is like a water-based degreaser, and I've sprayed that on and wiped that off, so that'll pretty much evaporate. So I usually do that in most of my artworks and Harley paint jobs and anything like that, automotive. I'll use both the automotive style degreaser as well as a water-based one just to be safe. I'm using a tape here by 3M just to mask up a border, the green tape. So I find this is just really good for borders, and if you're likely to sort of put on a lot of paint, and I'm going to be using a lot of Intercoat clear to seal each coat of the candy, so that's why I'm using this tape, because it seems to withstand that a bit better. I've just put into my CMC Plus Micron, my Iwata airbrush, a white mixed with pink as a base color, and I'm using an Art Tool True Fire template by Mike Lavallee, and I'm just basically putting down the first layer of flame. So I'm not going too sharp with this, I'm sort of going a bit, it's kind of like painting loose to tight, so as we do the other layers we'll go a bit sharper, but I'm doing this as a bit more of a wispy flame, which is pretty much my style of flame anyway. If you want it to look a bit more heavier or full or more solid, then you can apply a bit more paint. So using that white with pink mix, you can see I've just laid out that first layer, and now I've got a Gerson tack rag, a blue tack rag, and I'm just pulling that apart. It's a brand new tack rag, and I'm just letting that drop in my hand, wiping the panel down. So this will remove any of the dry spray created from our first layer. This is important to do because we're going to be using candy colors, so we don't want any dried paint underneath to get us, we basically want a nice smooth surface, so that gets rid of any of that. So into my airbrush now, I've just added some violet candy. It's a base coat candy, so therefore it's already mixed up with the binder, and it's a DNA violet candy that we're using. So using my Iwata HPCR Revolution, which has a 0.5mm needle, I'm saturating all the areas that I've painted with that candy. So I'm just giving that a few coats. When I say saturate, I'm applying quite a bit, but just be careful, make sure that the candy obviously doesn't run. I'm only spraying the areas where my flame is, okay? So don't go right over the panel. We only want to hit the areas where we've got that layer of pink and white that we just laid down with the templates. Okay, if you get a bit of overspray on the black areas, that's fine. That's why we're using a candy, because it just disappears into the black, and once you clear coat it, you won't really see it. Okay, I've just topped up the airbrush again. That's the drawback of obviously using an airbrush. You could probably use one with a bigger cup, but I've had these airbrushes for many years and they're just a great workhorse for this sort of application. So once I get that covered, you can keep going and going and going, but eventually it'll go so dark that it's almost black. I've just given it a tack rag again to remove any of the dry spray from that the overspray builds up, or the airbrush has built up while applying that candy color. Just making sure I'm using an air blower there to blow off any other residue that may have come off the tack rag. And then I'm using a aerosol can actually that we filled up with SG100 House of Colour Intercoat clear. So yes, we've got a machine that can put that into an aerosol can. So we did that just to make life a bit easier, especially for these sample panels. When I'm doing it on a Harley or someone's car or something like that, I won't obviously use an aerosol. I will then go and switch to my LPH 80 iWater spray gun, mini spray gun, to apply that Intercoat Clear. Now I personally prefer to put the Intercoat in between each candy to seal it off. I've heard that it's not essential, but I find it's just a good safeguard, especially if the person that's going to clear it hasn't had experience with clearing over candy colors. Alright, so you can see here I'm starting to add that next layer, which again is made up of the white with pink mix that we've got. And I'm just adding in a feather. So the reason being is this is actually a sample panel for a project that we're working on for a lady's Harley. So she wanted some feathers in there. So we want them nice and subtle and flowing with the fire. So you could see I did that layer of fire first using the templates again from Art Tool, the Michael Valley True Fire. There's probably a mix of the series 1 and 2 templates that we're using. So if you do want to know which one, I own both sets, but just have a look on the website and pick which ones you like the best. I'm just working on the next feather here. So again, as you could see, the first layer of that additional layer of fire has been done, and now I'm just working in that, mapping out that feather. So we don't need to go super duper detailed. It's just to get a bit of a base coat down, and now you can see the camera's panned out because I'm filling in a few more of those flame licks that I just laid down, just to give a bit more body, and that means the candy's going to sit up a bit brighter on that tone, because we're about to shift to the pinky fuchsia-y candy that we're going to use. Again, give it a tack rag, so really important in between each layer and each candy layer to tack rag it down. You could see there that was the DNA fuchsia candy, which is pretty much like a pinky purpley candy. And we're going to do basically repeat the step from before, and we're going to coat over all these things. So obviously if you don't want feathers in it, just don't add them in and you can follow all the steps. But you could also use that sort of idea in principle for other murals, so being it skulls or anything else that you want to hide within the fire. So I'm just coating that again with my Revolution with the fuchsia candy. Again, this is a base coat candy, so it's already mixed with the binder. Some candies, we also use a lot of House of Colour candy, and those basically you can get dyes. Same with DNA, you can also purchase the dyes. If you do purchase it as a dye, the benefit is you can control how the strength of it, so you can mix it up and make it a bit stronger so you do less coats. But you've got to then mix it into a carrier, so just be wary of that. And when I say carrier, I mean a binder, so it's just a transparent base coat. Again, with the tack rag, so the blue tack rag there, I'm wiping off any of that dry spray that's created from the airbrush. So to try and avoid that too, you can add a bit more thinners into your paint. So that will help to sort of keep it a bit wetter, but then you just got to be careful not to run it. You can see there I've done a coat of using the aerosol pack again with the SG100 Intercoat Clear by House of Colour, and now I'm switching to a thin down white, so a base coat white in my CMC Plus Micron, and I'm going to now pick out the brighter areas on those feathers and just get a bit more body to them. So just continuing to use that white. We're going to bring the camera in a bit closer so you guys can see. So you can see there I'm just hitting that center stem of the feather and then adding some more detail. So just using that white again. You could also use violet and shade it a bit more, but in this particular case for this project, the customer wants it nice and subtle, so we didn't want to go super duper detailed with the feathers. So they're virtually meant to look a bit more hidden within the fire. But again, that's up to you how much you want to render them. So by hitting those bright areas, you can see the candy will then become a bit brighter on those spots and start to give you a bit more depth. I'm doing the same with the other hidden feather there. And keep in mind, candy flames, they really come to life once you put the final 2-pack clear on. So, you know, you really, I mean, this is watching it on a video, so it's hard to get the gist of it. And out in the sunlight, these, you can really see through the fire to the lowering layers. So you can see through the fuchsia pink right up to the violet that we laid down first. So that's the beauty of using candies. The transparency gives you the illusion of depth. So what we're doing now, using that same white, I'm just again going in with my templates. You can see this is an Art Tool Mike LaValle True Fire set. This is the second set that you can get. So yeah, there's all different shapes. So just if you do get a set, experiment with the shapes that you like best, that you find creates the best looking fire for the way you layer it. But I'm just again getting another layer just to get a bit more of a 3D element. I'm just using the edge of the template. So the biggest mistake that most people make with realistic fire is that they use the template pretty much 90 to 100% of the way through to create every flame lick. The idea is to get that flow, that natural flow first, and you just accentuate those shapes by using the template. You don't rely 100% on the template, otherwise it's going to look way too seaweedy. So I've tack ragged it down, and now I'm getting the fuchsia pink again from DNA, the candy there, and just putting another layer right over the top of all my fire. So it's just adding a few more coats to that. Again, you can go as heavy and bright as you want, so the more coats, the more it's going to change. So just experiment. This is why even I still do sample panels. It's a good way to show a customer before you do it all on their bike, and then they, you know, you might not have the perfect coverage or they're not happy, and so this is a good way to make sure that you've done something and you can show them, and it looks a bit more accurate than just a digital rendering. So now back with my tack rag after doing the candy, and I'm just getting that dry spray off again. You can see there's more layers now, the depth is building, and I've grabbed my aerosol pack again with the SG100 House of Colour Intercoat Clear, given that another coat, and now I'm ready for my next layer, which again is using white, and I'm just going to again detail these feathers a bit more. So even though it looks as though on the video the candy has pretty much eliminated what I did in the last step, this is just adding more and more detail. So, you know, you can add steps, you can do more than this, or you can reduce the amount of steps as well. So it's purely up to you on what look you're going for. So I suggest you just experiment, and you'll come up with your own little methods of what works and looks best for what you want. So you can see I'm starting to bring in some of those flames and just a bit of a wisp coming off the feather, so it looks like it's entangled in the fire. So you want to make it look like it's a part of the flame, not just sitting on top. And then again I'm going through with my template, and I'm just trying to attack the high spots only and just brighten them. So you don't want to go too crazy, because again then it's going to lose its shape and its flow. So a good thing that you can do as well before attempting fire, if you've never done it, is get yourself a reference picture of some realistic fire, and then just with a grey lead or even a marker, just try and draw it on some paper and get a bit of a flow going, because that's sort of the flow that you've got to simulate using these templates. So it's a really difficult thing to teach people, because it kind of, you just sort of got to flow with it and make it up as you go. So I'm just, I've done that with the white layer on top, so that's our final layer, and all I'm doing now is just with the fuchsia pink candy, I'm hitting the edges only. Okay, so I'm just softening those bright white highlights to bring them sort of as part of the rest of the fire. So just keep on adding that little pink. The key is not to go over everything that you've just done. So I'm virtually just hitting those edges. But you can see it's just softening it and making it a part of the previous layer, but still giving it enough brightness to make it pop. Again, that's done with the HPCR Revolution by Iwata. So that's it for the flames there. So again, you can do more or less, whatever you want to do. And I'm just removing the border there, the masking tape, before I apply the final coat of Intercoat Clear, and then it can go off to the painter to get 2-pack cleared. But for this video, at least you saw how we created it. So here you go, here's the finished panel. Hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to subscribe, and we thank you for watching.